Thank you both so much for those wonderful talks. Let's welcome back our exceptional speakers, Natasha Moore and Sam Chan, to this live discussion. For those at home, this is your time to ask questions. We've had loads coming in, and we encourage you to please continue to send in your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can. The Edge is meant for you, and for you to take our speakers to the edge. Please keep sending them in, and we'll do our best. First question, and now to throw to Sam. How can we know which attitude we hold towards ourselves and others? Can we swing between quadrants?
I'm sure context is everything, and we may find ourselves like in a football team, I will be in this quadrant, but when I'm at university, I'm in a different quadrant. When I'm at home with family, I'm in a different one. So I think the big thing is self-awareness, and so that we just need to learn to be good at asking self-diagnostic questions.
Fantastic. And just thought I'd give a little update. Thank you for those sending through the questions. We've actually had people come in from all sorts of what I thought was exotic places. Truganina, I actually found out was in Melbourne, but I thought that was somewhere exotic. But we've had people come in from Cambodia as well as Leeds, and then Sydney, Brisbane and Newcastle. So thank you all for joining us. Question for Natasha. Where did you get your pin from, actually?
Well, this was a gift.
There you go. Wonderful.
I'm not sure I can say, but I think if you say something about it near social media, it will start presenting you with ads for it.
Wonderful. So. But on a serious note, how do you strike the balance of introversion and staying connected to people?
Not always very well. So this is a thing that I'm constantly working on and trying to figure out. You know, I've had kind of a policy for a couple of years now where I'm like, okay, Thursday night is introvert night. It's currently Thursday night, so it obviously doesn't always work out that well. So I balance my season of work and relationships and figure out, okay, am I getting irritable? Am I struggling with this? Do I need to kind of scale some things back? Do I need to schedule in some alone time? And I've just been reading a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which is a few years old now and is by an American pastor, and it's excellent. And I found it really helpful on he looks at the life of Jesus. One of the things he does is looks at the life of Jesus and he spends all this time, he does what he has to go and have solitude and have silence. But then when things impinge on that, he rolls with it because he just really cares about people. So I feel like if I'm trying to do that thing where you love your neighbour as yourself, then there is a kind of, thoughtfully going with the flow. That means you end up kind of connection with people breeds more connection with people.
Lovely. Sam, it's easy to have friends who are just like us. How can we have shared moments if there's language or cultural differences?
Yeah, that's fascinating because there are 3 layers to who we are. On the outside, there's interests, and then there's a middle layer, values, things that we value, see as good or bad. But there's this central layer. What is our worldview? What is our story, in other words? And it's always fascinating that people always begin on the outside layer, interests. Like, oh, you like movies, I like movies. You like coffee, I like coffee. And then there's a middle layer. Oh, you believe in, public education. I believe in public education. But after a while, we discover things that our interests only go so far. Oh, you like James Bond movies? Well, I don't. Or you like rugby union? I like rugby league. So they actually end up being very shallow relationships. So it's actually a worldview and shared common stories that really, really help. And I think in the end, that's the difference between acquaintances and friends. So acquaintances are the people we have friendly conversations with, like the barista when you order your coffee, but you're not really going to invite that person to your wedding. They're not really an intimate, close friend. And so I think shared common story is the big one.
Yeah, fantastic. Natasha, can friendship be cultivated, or does there need to be an initial spark or attraction?
I'm going to float a thought here. Feel free to disagree with it. We'll see if this is true, and maybe I'll then disagree with it. I wonder if friendship is a bit like happiness, that it's this thing we really want and desire and that makes life amazing. But when it's the thing that you go after and pursue, it's quite elusive. So happiness is often a byproduct of pursuing other kind of meaningful important things in life, we kind of go, oh, I'm happy. Whereas when we kind of go, I just want to be happy, somehow it kind of always loses and things kind of crumble to dust. And I wonder if friendship can be a bit like that. If you're like, oh, I'm looking for who will my best friend be, and how can I have more friends, and I want that person to be my friend. That if that's the thing you're focusing on, it can be quite difficult to cultivate. But if you're focused on other things, and I think particularly on like trying to do things for other people, looking to the needs of other people, being like, okay, what does this person need? How can I help them? Then friendship is a thing that naturally grows in the midst of that. And, you know, it's so often that like the person that you'd pick as the person you'd get on with and who would become your good friend, you just kind of don't really end up gelling. And the person who you found kind of irritating at the start, or you thought they didn't like you at all, you kind of persevere and you're like, oh, let's be kind to each other, and maybe you're thrown together. You do end up cultivating this deep friendship. So I think there are some deliberate practices in terms of like, you know, actually taking risks with sharing yourself, like what you're actually going through, not kind of putting up a front or trying to compare or compete. There are things like that that can help, but also there's a serendipity to friendship where it can't really be planned out the way we maybe often want to plan out our lives.
No, that's great. Sam, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, that sort of makes sense because,
disagree?
you know, because the essence of friendship are human beings, and we're not robots, we're not computers, we're not puppy dogs. There's a raw, wild unpredictability to human beings, and so there would be with friendships. And, you know, I remember I have a friend, he was dumped 10 times in a row by this girl, and the 10th time I told him, that's it, just stop, just give up on her, like, stop. He went one more time and, you know, she said yes, they're happily married. They've been happily married for 20 years.
Wow.
And you sort of realise, well, there's a rawness and unpredictability. And also, you know, if you're an Asian, you have this story where, you know, at high school you say, please, mum and dad, can I get a girlfriend? They go, no, not until you finish HSC. Finish HSC, can I get a girlfriend yet? They go, no, not until you finish uni. Finish uni. Please now, can I get a girlfriend? They go, nah, not until, you know, you get a job. Get a job. Please now, can I get a girlfriend? Not until you put a down payment on a house. So you put a down payment on a house, and then they come to you and they say, why aren't you married yet? What's wrong with you? You know, you think, oh, like they think there's this predictability, like an algorithm. And maybe that's what we struggle with in the Western world, where we know exactly what we're going to get at McDonald's, you know, this touch screen. I'm going to walk up, and we think friendship's like that. I'm going to have a person that likes coffee, that likes walks by the park and likes the beach. You know, we think it should be predictable. But as you say, there's this serendipity. Yeah, there's this rawness, there's this wildness. There's this book called Black Swan by Nicholas Nassim Taleb, was in the top 10 bestsellers list for, you know, years. And his big thing is black swan moments. You know, you can't predict when they happen. Just because things happen this way in the past doesn't mean they're going to happen this way in the future. So we need to embrace the seemingly randomness of life and
The chaos.
and embrace it. Yeah.
The mess.
Here's a question, Sam. It's a bit of almost a pastoral in nature, which is, what do you do if you're continually sacrificing for friends, but it's not reciprocated? You know, where there isn't that, you know, mutuality in it. Is there something we can do or be aware of? Do we need to put our guard up and protect ourselves?
Yeah. So in the Bible, there's this book called Proverbs, and it's full of wisdom. So not what's true, not what's false, not what's good and bad, but what's wise. What is the apt thing to do? And there's so much stuff on friendship, and it is that sort of stuff. Should I be a friend with this person who never gives back? And it's a sort of a wisdom question. But maybe we could also ask ourselves, well, what am I wanting out of this friendship? Is it an insecurity where I need to feel needed? So we need to ask questions of the friendship, and also to know that although we need friends, we don't need to be friends with everyone. And that's a big key to friendship.
Any thoughts on that one, Natasha, in terms of, when you feel like you should either lean in more or perhaps pull away?
I was thinking of a particular conversation while you were talking that I once had with a friend who, she's a lot braver than I am, and we've been friends like for decades. And I remember having this conversation with her where she was like, you've remained friends with these people And I've had a lot of friendships end, and like I don't know why that is. And we were kind of talking it through, and I was like, she has a way of when, things are not working in a relationship, in a friendship, she's brave and she kind of will call it out and kind of confront that. And that has led to friendships ending. And I'm not brave. And I have a way of just like pretending it's fine or, like seething inside, but, not saying anything. And I don't think that's a better way. But what happened with some friendships over time, I found, is that we are in different life stages. People are needier at some times. People change. And so some friendships that were kind of a bit rubbish at various points and had a lot of tensions, we come out to a different time of our lives, and the fact that those bridges haven't been burned mean that we have something to kind of rebuild and there's something about those long-standing old friendships that's really valuable. And so I don't really know, I still haven't figured out what the answer is in terms of actually, those are difficult conversations to have, to go, hey, there's a problem here, and I want to talk to you about it. And I think it's really good to have those conversations. I haven't figured out how best to have them. It takes a lot of kind of grace and humility on both sides, I think. But if that can be done well, then that can be such a kind of strengthener and beautifier for that friendship.
Yeah, because obviously if you can get through something like that, that means you've got some sort of a foundation. You've overcome something, It's not going to just go to water every time there might be a disagreement or, you have different preferences. So.
And I think it plays into what we were saying before about that spark or attraction. Like you might need something we really like spending time together. But if whenever you stop enjoying spending time together and you're like, actually, this is a bit of a drag now, if you move on and find new friends, you never get the rewards of those kind of long-standing, this person knew me when I was, a dumb teenager and all that kind of thing.
Fantastic. We got one more question here from the UK. We've got a question for both of you, actually. We'll go with you, Sam. Uni students are one of the loneliest groups of all. This is from Peter in the UK. Even though they have loads of social contact, is there any ideas why that is?
Yeah, university's a hard time because everyone's picking and choosing their subjects. It's not like, and people are in such a rush, so you're not getting the proximity. And if you do sign up for a society, the kayaking society or the rock climbing society, again, it's a shared interest and it's only just fleeting. And I've got to admit, I used to play rugby at my university for 5 years. Never once was there meaningful friendship from rugby because you play your game and then you go your separate ways. So it really is, you need some sort of deeper community where there's some shared common story. And let's face it, in the Western world, those communities are getting harder and harder to find. I'm a parent. I read a lot of parenting books, especially by a guy called Stephen Bidoff. He says it takes a village to raise a child. You need to steer your child into a village, a community. And then he pauses. And I can tell even Stephen Bidoff is struggling to say, well, what's that community going to be? So he says, a local sports team. But I know my kids play a lot of sports. There's no real community beyond the Saturday sport. Again, everyone goes their separate ways after the game's over. Then the next thing he says is church. Yes, he says church. And going to a church myself, I can see how there's a shared, common, transcendent story that transcends, tribe, tongue, culture, language.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think it's one of the most wonderful things when you travel, and I'm sure we've all had those experiences where you're overseas and just by virtue of that, you can find community and then be out at dinner that very evening because of that shared story. This is another question for you, Sam, which is, are there strategies to move into the safe and secure sweet spot? That's from Valerie in Sydney. So can we move into that safe and secure sweet spot?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I actually had to see a counsellor myself. I've been burnt by a few bad relationships. And I think the counsellor actually asked me, what are you looking for? And I thought, you know what? I'm looking for approval from, and for me, it was a father figure. I was converting people into father figures and desperately needing their approval. And it could have been someone like a rugby coach, a surfing coach, my boss, for example. And I thought, wow, I'm actually profoundly insecure. And not that these people are the problem, but I'm looking for love in all the wrong places. I'm asking people to be someone they cannot be. And that's why I had to sit back there. Okay, well, again, in my Christian tradition, I say to myself, I have an earthly father and he loves me. I don't have to look elsewhere. But in the Christian tradition, I also have a heavenly father who adopts me, loves me unconditionally. So if I can be secure in that relationship, I don't have to overfunction and overperform in other relationships and ask them to do what they cannot do and destroy the other person because I'm asking too much from that other person.
Any thoughts on that, Natasha, in terms of that security?
Can I add something to the uni students?
Please.
I'm going to just
go there.
Backtrack here. Because I was thinking about how, tonight's theme is the never more connected, never more lonely. And I feel like neither of us has talked that much about the technology thing, right? Which is particularly for young people, I think, quite influential. How much are we connected through our phones, but how much of a screen does that put up between us and other people? And I was thinking about this in terms of, I had a conversation with a good friend recently. We're both what are apparently called geriatric millennials. We're like the oldest edge of the millennial generation. And she and I have very different approaches. So she's a phone person. She'll call people on the phone. I younger millennials and Gen Z are like allergic to. They're like, why would you call someone? I won't pick up my phone. Like, we'll text and I will take my time. And so we kind of had a conversation about like why I kind of freak out when she calls me, but she's like, why can't we just talk? And I was thinking about how that's a kind of interruption, the way that we don't have so much, like we make plans to see people, but we don't have that practice anymore of kind of dropping round to each other's houses, like of just kind of incidentally running into people and accommodating that mess, right? And how I wonder if there's an art that people are kind of figuring out of how do we use technology in ways that genuinely connect us, and then work on those ways that they're actually separating us or giving us a way to kind of push people away or keep them in a box that's kind of safer. So I think maybe like saying yes and no to our technology, like thinking about that in quite, reflective ways instead of just going with the flow of like, it's easy to get the dopamine hit of the notification, but that doesn't require anything of me, any actual connection to people, as opposed to a call, which does.
Yeah, because my wife and I, we do date night once a week, well, pre-COVID, post-COVID, and the instant we jump in the car to drive off somewhere romantic, my wife pulls out her phone and she's starting to check her messages. And I say, what are you doing? She said, I just got to get on top of this email. I'm like, what are you doing? And apparently what the phone says is, right now, I'm afraid that out there is something more interesting than what I have going on in front of me right now.
She might dispute that interpretation.
And that's what phones have done. They've robbed us of being present in the moment with that person that we're face to face with.
That's fantastic. I think we're going to have to wrap it up, and even though there's some brilliant questions still coming through on the impacts of social media, and I'd love, obviously, perhaps in your closing remarks, if I could suggest like what we can do personally to ensure social media doesn't rob us of what genuine friendship can offer. But love to hear from you all. What would you say to tonight's audience as a take home for them? As where is the hope to be found in how we do friendship and connectedness in this age of loneliness? Happy to go to you first.
Wow. So for me, what I learned was I need to be secure in who I am, so I don't look for esteem and validation and don't require it from a relationship and therefore destroy the person because I'm asking them to do something they can't. Also, I need the freedom to sacrifice. And again, this is where my Christian worldview empowers me, because I believe in a Jesus, a Son of God, who gave up everything. And I realize it's in my DNA to give. And this is a great irony of relationships. We think if I give, I'm going to be drained and become empty, but somehow in giving, we become empowered. And it's actually in our DNA. And in the Christian worldview says, yes, of course it is, because it's in the DNA, the rhythm, the fabric of the universe, because behind this universe is a creator who gives. And when we image a giving creator, we're in rhythm, we're in resonance, we're in tune with this universe.
That's wonderful. Natasha, anything to add to that?
Oh.
I know, hard act to follow.
I would just say something really simple, I think, which is that loneliness can make us, it kind of turns us inwards. Those statistics about people not being willing to talk about being lonely, like it's this kind of thing that makes you feel just kind of tainted and just so disconnected from others, and like you can't get out of that hole. And that one of the real antidotes to that, I think, is to decide to be outward looking. So rather than like, what's wrong with me, or like everything is terrible for me, to be like, well, okay, what's going on with other people? Because everyone else is struggling with something as well. And one of the most wonderful and kind of counterintuitive antidotes to that is to be like, who can I serve? Who can I help? What can I volunteer to do? And that kind of kicks off a virtuous cycle instead of a vicious one of bringing you out of yourself, of connecting you with other people. And it can be something really kind of simple, just a start on that journey that we can come back to again and again. Be like, what do other people need? And go for that.
That's beautiful. What a wonderful note to end on. Thank you both so much for what's been a wonderful discussion. Thank you for sharing your insights, but also your honesty and little bits of your own stories and temperaments in terms of how this, interacts for you both. This is a perfect topic for us to discuss and to consider at our Third Space team. And for those that don't know, Third Space is a national initiative of City Bible Forum, providing an engaging community and spaces for intelligent conversations about God. We'd love to connect with you in person. We have over 1,000 people engaged in our many networks around Australia, and there is most certainly space for you. Leave your contact details on the feedback form, and one of our team will get in touch. Before we leave, I'd like to draw your attention to the bottom of the event page or inside of your event booklet. So there's 3 things. Firstly, feedback. Your feedback is exceptionally valuable to us. To make these events even better in the future, in the booklet, you will find the QR code for the feedback form for the Edge. Can you take a moment to find the page and fill in the form? This should only take 2 minutes, and this helps us keep the conversation going. Number 2, resources. There are more great resources on this topic in our Third Space resource library. You can start by going to the back of the event booklet or to the bottom of the event webpage and clicking on the link. The podcast, The Bigger Questions with Rob Martin, is worth highlighting. The episode is Intimacy, Going Beyond Shallow Relationships. And number 3, and finally, our next event is on the 11th of November. It's the Smith Lecture, The Art of Gentleness, a radical alternative in an age of outrage, with Dr. Michael Jensen. And you can find more about this event and be sure to register tonight through that information pack. The information is in the Edge booklet, and we'll be back for the feedback material you will receive in the days to come. Thank you for being here tonight at the final Edge event of 2021. Also, thank you to Audio Advice and, of course, to our speakers, Dr. Natasha Moore and Dr. Sam Chan. We want to thank you for making this event possible. I'm Daniel Principe for The Edge. We hope you've enjoyed this night, and we hand back over to Russell Matthews.